Okay, for assignment 2, the first thing I'm going to do is make a new folder. We want a new folder for every assignment. This is able, first initial, last name, underscore, assignment 2. Okay, and that's in the root of our assets folder of our project. So go into that, do a new scene, don't save, file, save scene as. Make sure we go to the assignment 2 folder, and then first initial, last name, underscore, LightSwitch. Okay, there we go. So for this, we're going to also use a package. It's a custom package just like Playmaker was. So let's go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and I put that right on my USB. This will be wherever you downloaded it from Blackboard. So click that, open. This will take a moment. And let's import. It's going to want to reload the scene a few times. Okay, so when that's done importing, you'll see here in our Project Explorer, it's added a light bulb directory. So in this light bulb directory, we have a folder for materials, textures. We have a light bulb, which is the geometry file. This is the raw FBX. We've got our import settings here. This is all set the way it needs to be. And then we have this light bulb prefab, which is this is the item we want. There's also a shader file. We'll come back to this later. It's got some information that we'll want to use. But you can take a look in the materials folder. This has got the material for the light bulb with all the textures already assigned. And the textures folder obviously has the textures. So let's drag the light bulb prefab. Let's drag it from the project window into the hierarchy. And that will place the light bulb in the center of our scene. If we've got the light bulb selected, we can come to the viewport, press F, and we'll center on the light bulb. Okay, let's rename the light bulb prefab to just light. And let's right click, and we're going to create an object directly under the light, so it's going to get a child. Hopefully you guys watched the Unity videos on hierarchy. This is where this knowledge is going to start to come in handy. So under light, we're going to do a point light, and that places a point light directly under the light. Now there's a space in this point light here. I like to go ahead and I like to take the space out of every name I come across. Okay, so we have our light bulb geometry and we have our point light. However, it's not terribly obvious that anything is being lit. There is light coming in from this light, it's just there's nothing in there to hit it. So we're going to add a few objects just to see the light so we can get an idea, because we're going to be turning this light on and off, and we need to be able to see the light going on and off to know if our FSM is actually working. So I'm going to create a plane to start with. That's very bright. I have a feeling that this project is not set to, oh, I know what it is. It's this directional light. Get rid of this. We don't need that. We have our, see, there we go. There's the point light right there. All I did was put the plane in and we can see it. Let's put a few other objects in just to make it more visible. Just have a little more fun. Put a cube. And a sphere. And my favorite, the capsule. So hopefully you know all the hotkeys for this because you watched the Unity videos. W is move, E is rotate, R is scale. Alright, A little review for you in case you didn't watch the videos. If you didn't watch those videos, watch those videos, okay? Alright, so we can see there's light. It's hitting the objects. There's no shadows though. I like shadows, so let's put soft shadows on. And there we go. You can see shadows are being cast from the light now. Okay. Alright, scene set up. So now it's time to start programming this and getting some interactivity going. So let's select the top of the hierarchy of what we're going to be programming, and that's the light. Let's go to add component. Type FSM, I've already got it there. Do Playmaker FSM. Let's rename this FSM to LightSwitch. We can even, in this description here, give a description. Turns the light on and off with a mouse click. Just in case we have light switches that turn the light on and off with a key press as opposed to a mouse click. Alright, so let's edit this FSM. And here we go. Here's the Playmaker window. So this is much more complex than the weight machine is. So we have the light and we have the point light. So we're going to be turning this point light, its intensity, we're going to be setting it from 0 to 1 like that. So that's going to be our off state. That's going to be our on state. Now, if you look at the hierarchy, we've got this symbol here, this Playmaker symbol, on light. It's not on point light. So this is where our FSM lives. Our FSM lives on the light, the top of the hierarchy. We need to find a way to let this FSM know about the point light. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do that with a variable. A special variable called a game object variable. But to start, I'm going to rename state 1 init. That is short for initialize. This sets up some default values for us to work with. So over here on the variables tab, I'm going to change the variable type to game object, and we'll call this point light because that's what we're going to capture. And you'll see right here, after typing enter, you have to type enter after you type the variable name, otherwise it won't make the variable. So up here we've got our point light. It's not being used by anything. It's a type game object, and you can change the type here, but don't do that. We want a game object. So right now it's named point light. It has nothing assigned right now. So that's the next step, is we need to assign it. And we're going to do that with an action. So let's look at our scene again. There's our light, and it has a child, a point light. So let's search on child. Find child. Okay, cool. What's it say? It says finds the child of a game object by name. Excellent. So double click that, add that action to our init state. The child name we're looking for is point light. Make sure you get that right. Capitalization matters, so make sure you spell it right. Make sure you get the caps where they're supposed to be, and it is case sensitive. Store result, it wants to store it. We're going to store that in point light, the variable we made. Excellent. Okay, let's add some more states here. So let's add a light on state. Let's add a listen state. So we want to move off of initialize and move into a state where we can wait and listen for things to happen. So let's add finished as a transition. Click and drag that off onto listen. And then on listen, we want to basically wait for something to happen, to take action. So let's look for a mouse pick event. Mouse pick event is our sort of catch-all for mouse events. Okay. So when you're in a scene, there's a lot of objects. How do you know you can interact with something? So one thing that I like is I like to put a highlight on things that can be interacted with. It draws the user's attention. It's like, oh, I moved my mouse over that. I can work with that. So let's do on our listen state, let's do a mouse over Okay, so right now we have no events. We need to do an event for that. Let's add a mouse over event. Make sure you hit enter. So when the mouse is over, we'll do mouse over. Oh, look, there's a there's a warning up here. Game object requires collider component. All right. So the light has no collider. If there's not a collider on here, the mouse pick event doesn't know what to do. So it needs a collider to know that there's something to have an event for. So let's so like you see this ray distance here. What you're doing with the mouse pick event is you're shooting a ray from your mouse, and when it hits the object, it sends an event. So let's add that collider. Make it a box collider, and you'll see that that collider fits around the light perfectly. All right. So now we have another warning, the event not used by the state. So yeah, we don't have a transition here for that event. So add transition, mouse over. Okay, let's add another state. We'll call this the highlight state. I think I called it something else in the document, but it's the same thing. Actually, let me check that real quick and we'll rename it. Okay, in the doc I named this state mouse over, so the state is the mouse is over the object. So when the mouse goes over the object, we want something to happen. So let's look real quick at our material, which is where we handle the highlight. So if we have the light selected, and we go into on our inspector and we expand the light bulb shader here, there is an outline color and an outline width. Right now the outline width is set to 0. If you move the slider up, you see that this outline expands. Alright? Now all that is that's just an inverted version of the mesh that gets pushed out along the normal. So at a value of 0.009, that makes a nice little outline that you can see on the mesh. And this is something that you can play with. If you want a thicker outline or a thinner outline, you can do that. You're the programmer. So looking at this outline width, it's 0.009. So we need to set up an action to turn that on for us. So over on mouse over, let's go to action browser. Let's search on material, set material float. Okay. So this is a floating point type of data, and we know that because this is not a round number. This is a fraction of a number. It's a decimal, and a floating point is a decimal. So set material float. Now it wants to know what material are we setting a float on, and what's the float that we're setting. So the game object we want to do is the owner. That's great. The material index is 0. So to make things a little more confusing, an object can have more than one material. These are stored in an array, and each item in the array has an index. There is a, let's see, where do they have that? I believe it's, yes, that's on the mesh renderer here. There's this little thing here. You can pull this out, and this is our material array. So right now it's a size 1, and element 0 is light bulb, which is this shader right here. You can increase this if you wanted to have a different shader for a different part of the object. You just increase that by typing a different number, and then it will fill it. It automatically fills it with that, but you can select this, and if there's other materials, you can add them. You can add that, like a default material. Alright, but we don't need that. We only have one material for this object, and it's element 0 light bulb, which is, as you can see right here, material index is looking for the element. So we're using the game object. We're at material index 0, and the material says what material? Well, light bulb. Now the float. What float are we going to do? What float needs to be set? If we click on the shader file, which is in the root of the light bulb folder, there's a list of properties. These are the different types of data and properties that are our shader has to make it look the way it does. So if you look here, we have one called outline width. It's a it says it's a range, but it's a range between two floats. So the actual name of the property is underscore outline width. That's the float we want to set. So select the light again, go back to our state. The named float is underscore outline, and it's case sensitive. Make sure that we get this right. Outline width, it's a capital W. Okay, and the float value that we want to set was 0.008. Okay, so this is what we want to happen when we mouse over. Let's play and see what happens. Oh, the camera is out of position, so we need to move the camera, get it set up right. So we select our camera, we get a camera preview. Our camera cannot see the light bulb, so let's move it, rotate it, move it, just get it in position. Okay, hit play. Alright, so oh look, we changed the mouse over, but our outline was there from the beginning. Let's do that again. Okay, we're in listen, so let's select our light. We're in listen and the outline is present. Okay, we need to initialize the value of the outline width. So let's copy this action, the set material float on mouse over, select that, copy selected actions, go to initialize, init, paste actions, set the float value to 0. Alright, now let's hit play and see what happens. Alright, we just started, we're sitting in the listen state, there's no outline. Mouse over, we outline, but we move our mouse off and it's still there, the outline's still there. Alright, so we need to give ourselves the ability to go back to listen. Okay, so getting back to no outline is just like getting back to an outline. So we need a mouse pick event. So let's go back to our listen state and let's just copy selected actions, go to mouse over, paste actions. So when we go off now, right? So right now we're set to mouse over. We want to turn this to none. We don't want anything to happen. When we mouse off though, we want to go back to listen. So let's add another event. Let's call it mouse off. So when the player takes their mouse off, let's fill that in, mouse off with mouse off, add transition, mouse off. When the mouse is off, go back to listen. Okay, let's test that real quick. Alright, we're sitting in listen, mouse on, mouse over I mean, and we get the outline. Mouse off. Uh-oh, we still have an outline. What happened? Ah, we're not setting the material back to 0. So I initialized it to set it to 0, but I'm not setting it to 0 when we come back to listen. So let's just copy this action and paste it. Alright, let's try it now. Okay, there we go. We're getting feedback on we have moused over something that can be interacted with. Excellent. And I just noticed a little mistake here on the set material float. Since we're pulling and since we're setting the we're finding the named float by the index, we don't need this material right here. In fact, we really don't want that because that would set it. If we had more than one light bulb in the scene, we mouse over one of them and all of the lights would highlight. I mean, maybe you want that, but for the purposes of this asset, I don't want that. So I'm actually going to set the material to none. And none, since we're pulling it by the index. The index is local to just this object. It's not global to everything with that material. So let's check here. We got none and none, and we got one more here. We got to get this one to none as well. Okay, so with all of those set to none, let's see if it still works. Yes, it does. It still works. See, it's on an instance. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Okay. So our interactivity feedback is set up. We've clued the player in that something can be done with this light. Now it's time to actually let them do something with the light, namely turn it on and turn it off. So I've already got a light on state here. I'm going to go ahead and make a light off state as well. Alright. So from mouse over, we want to go to light on and light off. So we have a mouse down on our mouse pick event here. So how do we get to light off if it's on, or light on if it's off from one event of having a mouse down? So let's go ahead and add an event for mouse down. Mouse down, actually let's do mouse up. Like, if you think about it, if you do it on mouse down, the moment that mouse button, that left mouse button goes down, the light switches. Whereas if you do it on mouse up, they can back out. They can click down, decide they don't want to turn the light on, mouse off, and then let go. And I think that's a little slicker personally. You can do mouse down if you want. I think mouse up is better personally. Alright, so mouse up, we'll have a mouse up. And it says nothing uses this. So let's add a transition. Mouse up. Okay. So this is where we start to have to think logically. How do we get to light on and light off from mouse up? Can I do just that? Nope, I can't. I can't drag a transition to more than one state. So I need an extra bit of logic between light on and light off. So let's go ahead and add a state. I'm going to call this the toggle. So the idea is that when you mouse up, if the light is on, it will turn it off. If the light is off, it will turn it on. So we need something to check for that. We're going to do that with a variable. We're going to do it with an int. It could also be done with a bool, or it could be done with a string. We're actually going to do it with an integer, which is just a nice round whole number. We'll call this variable the light toggle. Make sure you set it to int and press 0. And you see here over on point light how it went from 0 to 1. We're using it once. This is handy to keep track of. If you're working on something, solving problems, and you go and check your variables and you see that you have, a half a dozen variables that aren't being used anymore, just go ahead and click that little X and clear them out of there. But we don't want to do that to light toggle right now because we just made it and we want to start using it. So back to state here. So what we got to do is we got to think about, we have this integer. Now let's check our actions. Let's type int, see what we can do with our integer. We have something called int compare. So this sends an event based on the comparison of two integers. So actually light toggle is kind of a bad name for this on second thought. Let's call this light state. And I think that's actually what I called it in the document. So yeah, we'll call it light state. So this action sends no events. Let's make events for it. So let's make an event for turning it on. We'll just call it turn on. And we'll make a turn off. And make sure you're hitting enter when you type in here to add those events. So integer 1 is going to be light state. And we'll let integer 2 just be 0. So if the light state integer is equal to 0, right here equal, we'll say that that means the light is off, right? So we want to toggle it. So if the light state is equal to 0, that means it's off. Let's turn it on. Okay, so we turned that to turn on if it's equal. Add transition. Turn on. Light on. Now, if the light state is on, so it's 1, that means it would be greater than 0. We want to turn it off. So we'll say if it's greater than 0, turn off. Add transition, turn off. Go to light off. Okay. Let's see if these work now. Okay, so we're sitting in listen. Mouse over, click, and I go to light on. Okay, it was kind of hard to see like what's happening because our light was on when I started. So let's go back to our initialize and let's turn our light off. Let's search in actions for light. Set light intensity. Excellent. And we want to use point light here. Game object, specify game object. So if we want to go from use owner, drop down, specify game object, click this button, which is use variable, because we have a variable for it, it's point light, and we want point light intensity set to 0, and we don't want to do that every frame. That's very expensive to do that every frame. Right, hit play. The light's off. There's nothing happening here. Click, it goes to light on. Okay. So let's copy this set light intensity action. Go to light on. Paste actions, and we can paste it in light off too, because we want basically to turn the light off. But over here, the intensity is at 0, so this light off is already set up. Light on, 1. Okay, excellent. Let's play. Light turns on. Okay, can't turn it off though. We don't have that set up. Got to set up that part. Okay, so on this toggle, we have this integer compare. Now we want to give this light state integer an initial state. So we want to initialize it with a value. So let's do, I think it's set FSM. Yes, set FSM int. We want to use this one here, use game object, use the owner. We don't need to worry about that since we only have one FSM on this object. And the variable we want to use is, I want to use LightSwitch. Should give me, there we go. So set the FSM name to LightSwitch, and once you've done that, it will give you a list of compatible variables for this FSM. Choose light state, and we want the light to start in the off state, so we'll set that value to 0. Okay, so let's copy this action. So what we want to happen is, in order for this toggle to work, we want to change the value of the light state integer when it enters the on state and the off state. So we want to set it so that it's on, right? So when we go to light on, let's change the light state to 1, because the 1 signifies it being on. To 1, and paste the action for the light off state, and that value is 0. Basically, the light is off. So now we need to, there's no point in checking this right now because we can't loop back around. So we need to find a way to get back to the listen state from light on and light off. Okay, so let's just try and get our light on and our light off states back to listen. Let's brute force this with finished events. Let's add a finished event to each of these. Click and drag to the listen state. And let's see what happens. Let's hit play. Okay. So far so good. Click. Okay, we got an error here. You see how the pause button happened over here? We threw an error. See, LightSwitch, light:switch, which is our object on our state machine. Loop count exceeded maximum 1,000. So it basically went through this loop 1,000 times really quickly. Default is 1,000, and we can override that if we want, but it's not part of the design for it to loop through this so many times. So what we have to do is we have to add a special action to prevent this loop from happening. It's called the next frame event. So what next frame event does is it holds the update. It holds the state until the update function has been called by Unity's API. So just double click, select the state, double click the action to add it, send event, finished. Send event, finished. Okay, let's try that now. Okay, light is on, didn't blow up, excellent. Light is off. Light is on, light is off. Okay, cool, that works pretty well. There's just one thing that really bugs me about this is the light is off and the light bulb looks like an off light bulb. Turn it on and the light bulb does not look like it's turned on. It's got the exact same value. So while the rest of the objects are being lit, the light bulb itself isn't being lit. So we have a feature on the shader that will help us with that. It's called emission. So let's expand the shader here. So if you don't have it right here, it's right here. You select the light. It's the light bulb. Expand that. Down here, this emission. So let's just click and drag and see what happens when we up that. Yeah, look how it gets bright like that. So hit play so we can see it without all this stuff in the way. Okay, yeah, that looks better by far. That looks a lot more. That looks a lot better. So we want to do the same kind of thing with the emission that we did with the outline. So we want to do a set material float because, yeah, sure enough, this is a decimal. This is a floating point. So let's put that at 0. Let's just copy the set material float action on the initialized state. Paste the action. And instead of outline width, we want underscore emission. So we can leave that underscore there. Type emission. Copy this action. Go to light on. Paste action. I think a value of like 0.86 looks better than a full 1. You can make it a full 1 or something else if you prefer. And then on the light off state, we want to paste the action and leave that float at 0. Okay. Let's see how this works. Excellent. All right, let's try the, let's see if we can mouse down, mouse over, mouse up, nothing happens. That's slick. Let's watch the state machine do it too. Mouse over, mouse down, off, and up. There we go. Alright, and that is how you do a light. So, with all of that done, let's go ahead and let's save our scene. We're already set to yeah, the A-able light switch, so it'll be your name light switch, save scene. There we go. Oh, yes, don't forget, I'm not doing this because this is this is like, I think I have it set up to be 25% of your grade. So functionality is 75%, but so like if you get the functionality done perfectly and you were to turn this in right here to me, this would be a strong C, right? There's no comments in here. There's no color coding, and there's none of the little stylistic things that make an FSM easier to read are being done. So what you need to do to get a B or an A is you need to go through here and you need to add comments to these nodes and color them and their links where appropriate. Do what you think is right, what you think makes it easier to read, and you can get a higher grade than a C if you do this. Keep in mind, I'm not looking for a novel. I don't need, I don't need War and Peace in these node comments here, and I certainly don't need a rainbow of colors. Just keep it simple. Highlight important nodes, highlight important lines, and just make it readable. Okay, so once that's saved, same thing that we did with the first assignment. So if you right-click anything in the project area here, you can show in Explorer, find it on your computer. It'll open that right up for you. Just package these two guys up right here. Actually, you can just grab your assignment folder here. There's some debate on whether you actually need to give me the meta file for the folder. For now, I want you to give that to me. I'll be doing some testing later to see if that's actually the case. But select your folder, Control left click, select the meta file for your assignment 2 folder, right click, send to compressed zip, and check that into Blackboard for me. All right, thank you.